This is a 5.9 liter Cummins engine. It has a dead misfire on cylinder number 1. I'm not going to start it because it has one of those drunk driver blow and go thingies, but it has a brand new injector in cylinder number 1 and it is still misfiring. So I'm going to do a compression test, and if I'm correct, this is why you want to do compression tests before you replace injectors, because injectors are not cheap. So pop the valve cover and the tubes and all that, and we'll see what we find. So to R&R an injector in inline common rail Cummins engine, this is very similar to a lot of Cummins engines. To do a compression test, you do it through the injector hole. We don't have glow plugs, we can't go through there. So valve cover, intake horn, fuel lines, and connecting tubes have to come out for whatever injector that you are replacing. So there's my injectors. To remove injectors on Cummins engines, or at least these ones, you have to take the exhaust rocker off. There's 2 bolts that hold it in. And this is my tube, my connecting tube. Remember, if you have hard starts or long cranks or anything like that, it's a very good possibility that these tubes loosened up. These tubes go into the return circuit, and this is obviously my feed to my injector, so if you have high return flow, this could very well be the cause. It's a good idea to check the torques on these. With my fuel line off, I'm also going to install a block-off tool. This is the same block-off tool that I use to diagnose bad injectors, a no start, just because as I cranked during a compression test, the pump still turns, so it creates a lot of pressure, and I don't want to make a mess or anything like that. With my rockers off, disconnect your electrical connectors, and then take off your 2 hold down bolts. Don't lose anything. They make pullers for injectors, but I like to just use a little heel bar, and they'll usually come out fairly easily. This is kind of hard to do with one hand. That's my injector. Make sure that your copper washer is on it. If it's not, get it down from inside of the hole. You don't want to double those up. That can cause some serious issues. And then we are going to install our compression adapter. This is our adapter. It goes in just like an injector would. You torque it down just like you would a regular injector. If you're doing compression tests, don't forget to put the rockers back on when you do it. If you don't have valve movement inside the cylinder, you won't get any compression. So we're going to go ahead and put it in and see what we get. So with my tool installed, I'm ready to go ahead and do a compression test. Don't forget to reinstall your rockers. So now that I got my adapter in there, and my gauge set up, rockers back in, I can go ahead and do a compression test. You can use a bumper button on the starter to jump it. You can have an assistant crank it over for you. If it's a Dodge pickup like this, there's a connector underneath the battery that jumps straight to the starter. You just use a power probe. And we're going to go ahead and see if we get a good result, if it cranks over. Pretty good amount of blow by coming out just cranking. That's not a good sign. That, and we have about 50 pounds of compression. So we have a mechanical issue, not an injector issue. This engine was white smoking really bad, misfiring. It's not making any noise, but there was a lot of white smoke that acted a lot like a bad injector. We did an injector kill test, and number 1, there was no difference when we killed number 1 off. So this is why compression tests are very important when condemning injectors. Those injectors are extremely expensive. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a borescope down the hole and see if I can see anything obvious, but this is not a fuel related concern. This engine needs a rebuild. Kind of hard to see, but there's a pretty good chunk taken out of that piston. And this is probably a result of a failed injector, causing an incorrect spray pattern and overheating one side of it, which is a very common thing. Usually when that occurs, it starts smoking really bad, and the driver or owner or whatever ignores it for too long, and you end up with severe engine damage. So this customer decided not to repair the engine. Probably a good idea. So we're going to reinstall the injector and get it out of here. This is a better example of what happens to pistons with failed fuel injectors causing an incorrect spray pattern. This is a Deutz engine out of a crane thingy. So it's a really good idea to hop on these issues when they start, when smoke occurs. Otherwise, this is the end result. You could start off with a $500 injector and end up with a $10,000 engine rebuild. When reinstalling fuel injectors, just be sure to follow your service information on how to do it. There's usually a torque sequence. This particular one, you torque the hole down to, I think, 40 inch-pounds, back it off, torque the tube, do a final torque of the injector, and then torque the tube again. Every engine's different, but since this is common rail, we're just going to seat the injector, put our rocker arms back on, and plumb everything back up. This is common rail again, so there is no cracking of lines involved. There's self-priming. You shouldn't have an issue, and we'll get it out of here.